Hello, children of the Most High. My name is Chukwemeka with the Igbo Hebrews organization. This organization is the Igbo people who have realized that we are the Hebrews of the Bible. And when I say Igbo people, I mean the Igbo people in Nigeria, those in diaspora, and those who have been sold as slaves. And every other part of Africa, we are the true Hebrews of the Bible. And we have returned to the worship of the God of the Bible. We have left Christianity. We do not practice Judaism. We do not practice Islam. We are practicing the true worship of the Bible. So in today's lesson, I want to remind you of things that have been saying before. For those of you who are watching my videos, I made it very clear that one should be very careful when reading the New Testament. That if you have not read and understood what they call the Old Testament, then you shouldn't even open the New Testament, not even the first page, until you understand the scriptures, the book of the law, understand what they call the Old Testament, the book of the law, the first 5 books. Understand the book of Enoch, the book of Jubilees, before you can read the New Testament. If you do not understand it that way, you will just be floating. You'll probably be taken in whatever direction someone wants to take you. So today I'm going to go ahead and give you an example in the New Testament of some kind of external adulteration of the New Testament. And before I go ahead, and let me say here, a lot of people have made comments on my videos and even sent me mails that the New Testament is invalid, that it was created by the Romans and the Greeks to make the Hebrews worship idols. A lot of people that have known do not, they say the New Testament is a forgery, and they kind of pick and choose. I don't believe that, brothers and sisters, and I've been telling people that I'm going to do a video to explain my view on the New Testament. I believe that the New Testament has been extremely adulterated. And if you see our presentation on how the Bible was invented, we have that video here on our YouTube channel. If you see our presentation there, we made it very clear. We stated some of those aspects. I'm still going to do a full video on the New Testament and how it was extremely contaminated. But I do not believe that it was just invented out of thin air. So today we're talking about the position of women in the church. What does the law say? What does the scripture say about the position of women in the church? Unfortunately, what we're going to be discussing today is a very touchy issue, because it is based on what we're saying today that most people have castigated women and relegated women to the bottom of the barrel, and that is terrible. So today I'll be showing you that. First of all, let us look at some Bible verses, some verses in the New Testament. And if you read my concerns about the New Testament in the video how the Bible was invented, I mentioned that the New Testament was invented in such a way that once you are done with the Gospels and Acts of the Apostle, the next thing you're seeing is Paul. They have the books written by Paul everywhere. And the ones written by the apostles of Christ were taken to the back. In fact, it was after 400 years that they adopted those ones into the Bible. After 400 years, think about it. The people that Christ taught, Christ led around the world, their books was not included in the religion that is supposed to come from Christ. Think about that. This is massive adulteration. Now, does that mean that the writings of Paul is invalid? No, actually not, brothers and sisters. The writings of Paul is valid. However, if you go to the book of 2 Peter chapter 3, it says very clearly that we should be very careful when we read the books of Paul. If you read the book of 2 Peter chapter 3 from verse 15 and 16, Peter, who was his real name, of course, is Caiaphas, but Peter, the apostle of Christ, was telling us to be very careful when we read the epistles of Paul, because it can be misconstrued, it can be misinterpreted. Now, on the issue of women, there's something I want to show you, an example of how what Paul wrote is being misinterpreted and is being used to destroy the Hebrew family. Now, let's go to the Bible. First of all, let's start with the book of Corinthians. In 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 34, Paul wrote that women are to be silent in the churches. They are not permitted to speak, but must be submissive, as the law says. This is what Paul wrote, brothers and sisters. Verse 35, he says, if they wish to inquire about something, they are to ask their husbands at home, for it is dishonorable for a woman to speak in the church. Brothers, in the letter of Paul to Timothy, first letter to Timothy, chapter 2, in verse 12, in verse 11, Paul said, a woman must learn in quietness and full submissiveness. I do not permit a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man. She is to remain quiet. Okay. Let's keep going, brothers and sisters. Let's keep going. I want to show you in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, in verse 5, it says, every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head, for it is just as if her head were shaved. If a woman does not cover her head, let her hair be cut off. And if it is shameful for a woman to have her hair cut or shaved off, she should cover her head. All these things, brothers and sisters, are written by Paul. You see, I'm not saying that Paul's writing are invalid, but I want to show you how external influences, not Hebrew religion, external influences has influenced the things that Paul wrote in the Bible. I'm reading these things from the Bible in church. Now, brothers and sisters, this is not Hebrew religion. This is not Hebrew practice. So, why did Paul write these things? Let me tell you why. First of all, Paul was a Hebrew of the tribe of Benjamin, which is Ben-Ayamin. But Paul was of the tribe of Ben-Ayamin. However, he did not grow up in Hebrew communities. He grew up in Rome. He was trained in Rome. He grew up with the Europeans. The Europeans have a known culture for subjugating women. They have a known culture for doing that till this very day. Women have no say in their inner workings. These are the people that Paul grew up with, and these are the same people that Paul was writing to in Corinthians and even in letter to Timothy. These are the same people that Paul was writing to, and these are the same people where Paul grew up. Brothers and sisters, if you go to the book of Acts of the Apostles, chapter 21, you will see that the Hebrews were questioning whether Paul is even one of them, whether he even practiced Hebrew customs and traditions, because he did not grow up in the Hebrew tradition. There is nowhere, brothers and sisters, if you read the book of Genesis to Malachi, any other Hebrew writer did not subjugate women. Women have a high place in our society. In Igbo land, women are the judges. We have something that they call Umuada. Umuada means the daughters of a family. If there's a problem in the family, the Umuada have the final say. They judge that case, and whatever their verdict is, it stands. It's abiding in that family. Women are the judges in our community. Do I need to remind you, brothers and sisters, that one of the judges of the people of Israel was a lady named Deborah? Okay, another example I'll give you here, brothers and sisters, is let's go to the book of Genesis. If you go to the book of Genesis and you look at the life of Abraham and Sarah, there's Genesis chapter 21 in verse 12, right? Sarah told Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael away. Okay, and then Abraham was worried about it because Ishmael is his first son. Men love their first sons, they don't play with them, as you all know. Abraham loved his first son, Ishmael. Even though he loves his wife, he also loved the fact that he has a son. And as at that time, Isaac was not born. So Sarah told Abraham to send him away because the Most High inspired her to do that. And Abraham was worried about it, and the Most High appeared to him and told him to do what the wife said. Now, how do you compare that with Paul saying that women shouldn't say anything? Where did the Most High say anybody should do that? You see, now let's go. After Abraham, we meet Isaac. Isaac's wife was Rebecca. And Rebecca had two sons, Esau and Jacob, twins. Esau went and married from the women of the Canaanites. And these women of the Canaanites were known idol worshippers. Esau, let's see it, brothers and sisters. I'm talking about Genesis chapter 36 in verse 2. And let's read it. It said, now these are the records of the generation of Esau, who is Edom. Edom means red or albino skin. Okay, Esau was an albino. He said, Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan, Adah, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Oholibamah, the daughter of Anah, and the granddaughter of Zibeon, the Hivite, and also Basmath, Ishmael's daughter, the sister of Nebaioth. These are children that Esau went and married. And then Rebecca told Isaac that, look, Jacob has to go to my family and take a wife, because if he marries from among these girls here, I'm going to kill myself. What did Isaac do? Isaac listened and sent his only beloved son. He's not his only son anyway, but he sent Jacob to the house of Laban, who is the relation of Rebecca. Now, does Rebecca look like a woman that shouldn't talk in church, that should cover her head, and if she doesn't cover her head, they should go and shave it off? Does she look like that? Brothers and sisters, let's go to the Bible again. I want you to look at the prophet Joiah, or whom people call Joel. His real name is Joiah. The prophet Joiah in chapter 2, verse 28, he said, it will come about that after this, that I will pour out my spirit on all mankind, and your sons and daughters will prophesy, and your old men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions. The prophet Joiah said here that your sons and daughters will prophesy. That means your men and women will speak out. They will speak out. Is this the women that are supposed to come to church and stay quiet and go to ask their husband everything at home? So you see, where did Paul get this culture that he's writing about? It's definitely not from the Hebrews. But if you do not read, brothers and sisters, if you do not read what they call Old Testament, if you don't read the life of Abraham, if you don't read the book of Jubilees and the book of Enoch and all those ones, you will not understand this. You will see that that's how Hebrews are. I can't tell you how many people that castigate the Hebrews just because of these things that Paul wrote. I can't tell you how many people that latch onto this. In fact, there's one brother that sent me a video of an online church that he attends. I think it's the GOCC. And the brother was actually preaching, and a lady was asking him a question while he was preaching. And he told the lady, so you are supposed to be quiet. A woman is not supposed to talk in church. That's what he told her. And I was like, are you kidding me? Brothers and sisters, look, I don't care whatever church you're going to, but I want you to know, for those of you who want to practice Hebrewism, this is not Hebrew culture. What Paul wrote in 2 Timothy 11, 1 Corinthians chapter 11, and 2 Timothy chapter 2 is not, brothers and sisters, it is not the Hebrew religion. What is not, Paul did not get that from the Hebrews. He got that from the Europeans that he grew up with. That's where he got it. There is no law that women should be quiet. The Hebrew religion is filled with women speaking up and directing the men in the family. Look at the book of Judith, brothers and sisters. In the book of Judith, the Hebrews were about to go and make an agreement with a Persian warrior who came to lay siege on Jerusalem. And Judith said, no way. She went there and she called them that what they are doing is going to bring destruction on our people. And she went there and she took care of business in the name of the Most High. That is Judith for you, brothers and sisters. Okay, so we have a long history of women in our communities speaking up, both from our days in the Middle East and even to today in Igbo land. We have a long history of Umuada speaking up, of the women in our families speaking up and being vocal and directing the cause of the families. How many of you, brothers and sisters, have heard of the Aba Women Riot of 1929? This is the problem. They don't even teach this in school. How many of you have heard of Aba Women Riot? In November of 1929, brothers and sisters, women in Aba staged a riot, a demonstration against the colonial masters, against the British colonial masters. What the British colonial masters were appointing warrant chiefs, and by appointing warrant chiefs to rule the people, because Igbo communities were not ruled by chiefs, we were ruled by judges, and most of these judges were women. So they were diminishing the position of the woman. Like I mentioned, the Europeans, they have a long history of treating women like nonsense. That's what they brought to our communities. So these people, these colonial masters, they were appointing warrant chiefs and they were treating people anyhow. And Aba women, Igbo women in Aba stood up and demonstrated and had a riot that changed this. They had to change this nonsense, but these colonial masters had to change this policy. Aba Women Riot, it happened in 1929, brothers and sisters. If for those of you who don't know, that's because you were not taught in school. Go and read it up. And these are the kind of information that you should have. These are the kind of things that our girls growing up today should know, that Igbo women, Hebrew women have been judges in our community. They have been the people standing up to speak up against any issues in our community. And Paul all of a sudden just writes that women should be quiet and shouldn't say anything. Brothers and sisters, I want you to be able to pick out these things when you see it in scripture. Okay, when you see them in whether in the New Testament or the Old Testament, or even in the book of Acts of the Apostles chapter 2, in verse 17, they quoted what the prophet Joaiah said, that your sons and daughters will prophesy. Our daughters will speak up, our sons will speak up. And not what Paul said, that they should be quiet and tie their hair and go and sit down one place. We're not Muslims, for Christ's sake. That culture is gotten from the Europeans. So this is how the scripture was adulterated. It wasn't, this is not to say that everything Paul wrote is wrong. No, but Paul was influenced by the Europeans he grew up with, by the Europeans he's preaching to. It is that influence that he brought into Christianity, and people are interpreting it as a Hebrew custom. No, Paul was never known to even keep the Hebrew customs. He kept them, of course, but he was not known because he didn't grow up with the Hebrews. He grew up in Rome. And this is what Romans do. When they conquer a people, they take children from those people and train them. And those children will now come and adulterate their own culture in line with the Romans. And that is what they still do till today. Whether they call them the same Roman people, whether they call themselves the British or whether they call themselves Americans, it's still the same Romans, brothers and sisters. It's still the same people. They come and give green card and visa lottery, and take people from the countries they have colonized and train them. And these people come back and become diplomats, politicians, leaders, military leaders in their countries, so that they will raise their country in the way of the Romans. And Paul was one of such persons. I don't know whether the Roman government trained him, but I know that he grew up in Rome. He is a Roman citizen, and so he does not know the Hebrew tradition. And what he wrote here about women is an example of something that Hebrews are not known for. Hebrews are not known for relegating women to one side, to the back of the bench in church. Are you seriously kidding me? That's not what Hebrews do. In the Hebrew religion, in the Hebrew custom, even in the Hebrew custom, women take the front seat. They make decisions and they guide the direction of the family. So, brothers and sisters, I want you to know this, and may the Most High bless you. This is just the beginning. I plan to make lots of videos in the future to expose how the New Testament has been adulterated. Now, brothers and sisters, please be careful. I'm not saying that you shouldn't read the New Testament. I'm just saying that you should know when you read it that some things were added that are not based on Hebrew practice. That is why before you even start reading it, go and read the what they call the Old Testament. Understand the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Understand the book of Jubilees. Understand the book of Enoch. When you understand these things, then you can read. Then you can be prepared to read the New Testament, because the heathen have had hundreds and hundreds of years to adulterate that book. And may the Most High of Majesty bless you. Selah.